Hey, I'm Sophie Strauss. I'm here to talk to you guys about voting and why it's important for young people to vote and answer voting questions. And I am an artist and an organizer, and I recently started a volunteer-run email voting hotline. So for anybody who has questions about how to vote, you guys can email us at electionquestions2020@gmail.com. Right there. And also, I'm going to be reading off pieces of paper for this because there's a lot of handy dandy information and I don't have any of it memorized. So I'm just going to read it, guys. Stick with me because it's really helpful, I think. So why is voting important? Well, we're the largest generation in history, but our government reflects the preferences of older, whiter, more male-centric generations. And that's because they actually vote. As young people, we have the most at stake when it comes to politics because we're the ones who are inheriting the world and we're the ones who will have to live in it. We're the ones whose lives will be most impacted by things like climate change or the increasingly unaffordable housing market, by our impossibly expensive medical system, or by the plundering of our social services. Older generations have voted in favor of hoarding wealth and resources and have left us with a world that doesn't work for the majority. Now, voting isn't the only thing that we can do, but it is one of the most immediate and impactful ways that we can change the whole makeup of the world. If we vote, then we can claim our power as young people who are inheriting this country and this planet. But here's the problem, guys. Young people are not voting enough. And while a lot of people like to blame and shame young people for not voting, I don't think it's productive and I don't think it's helpful. And I think there are a lot of really meaningful reasons that people aren't voting, and they deserve to be talked about with care and compassion. First of all, it can be really overwhelming to engage with politics today because so much is going on, and because with social media, we're constantly flooded with all of this information, and it can be really overwhelming and sort of paralyzing. So I think the easiest way to engage in politics without feeling that constant sense of dread or insurmountable information is to ask yourself a really simple question. What do I care about? It can be as simple as things like, I don't like how expensive it is to pay rent, or I care about climate change because I don't want to live out the rest of my life on a totally uninhabitable planet. Maybe you care about affordable healthcare or housing. Maybe you care about immigration, or you've been struggling to pay off student loans, or you've been the victim of racial discrimination. Perhaps you or someone you know is disabled and you care about disability rights, or queer rights, or trans rights. You can pick one or many things you care about and use those as a guide for what and who you're going to vote for. A really easy thing to do is literally just Google the issue, like climate change, and the name of a politician, and you can see what's this person said and done about that issue. Second of all, voter suppression is real, and in general, voting can be really, really confusing. If you're a young person and it's your first election, it can be much trickier to figure out how to cast your vote because you've never done it before. But there are things that you can do to help make voting much easier. Whether that's knowing your rights in terms of getting time off of work or school to vote, being registered properly and confirming that registration, knowing how to wait in lines and when to get in line to vote, or how to navigate new voting apps and machines. These are real issues that we should not blame young people for. And if anybody has blamed you for that, I'm sorry. It is not your fault, and we're here to help. These issues are our responsibility to take accountability for, and it's ours to help you overcome. So let's talk about some of these issues and maybe hopefully clarify some of them. The first one is registration. Every single state, except North Dakota, requires citizens to register if they want to vote. Each state varies in terms of registration deadlines, so you can go to this website to double check your registration, and if you're not, register right away. In 37 states, you can register to vote online. You can do that here. In 17 states, you can register to vote on election day at the polls. And you can basically just Google if your state has what's called same-day registration. Each state's guidelines vary a little bit, so be sure to look it up, or again, you can reach out to us and we can help you look into it. We are currently in a primary election. So that means if you want to, 20 states have what's called closed or partially closed primaries, which means you must register as the party that's having their primary to participate in that primary. Finding your polling place. Rock the Vote has a really, really great and easy polling place locator tool. So just go to rockthevote.org and you can input the address that you use to register to vote, and they'll let you know where your most updated polling place is. It's worth checking on this even if you voted somewhere at the last election and you think you know where it is, because sometimes our polling places change. And find out the hours that it's open and think about how you might get there and all of those kinds of things. Next, We know that it's hard to make time to vote. It totally legitimately is. I would never pretend that that isn't true, or that you just have to find the time, or that that's really easy for everybody. The idea that everyone can leave work or class or find childcare to vote during polling hours on election day ignores the economic reality for so many people in this country. Also, not all polling places are as accessible for people with disabilities as they should be. But it's helpful to remember that you have rights when it comes to voting. In most places, your work or your school is legally required to give you time off to vote. Polling places also have to meet certain ADA requirements, and if they don't, you can alert your Secretary of State by calling their office. Several states also have their polls open for more than one day to allow for a more flexible window for working people. You can also often vote by mail and register to vote by mail online, which is something, again, you should email us about. For some primaries coming up, it might be too late to register, but there are some that are several weeks away, and it's also always good to just know your options. But the best way to make sure that you will actually vote is to make a concrete voting plan at least one day ahead. This is statistically proven to up your chances of actually getting to the polls and casting your ballot. So ask yourself, where is my polling place? What time of day will I go? What do I need to bring? Sometimes you need to bring a form of ID, sometimes you don't. Also, bring in a filled-in sample ballot or a voting guide that you like, and I'll give you guys a little bit more information on that in a second. But that way you're not panicking to fill in random things you don't know about on election day. You can go in calm and confident. Also, you should figure out how you're gonna get there. Are you gonna walk? Are you gonna bike? You're gonna drive? Do you have a ride? Do you need a ride? There are lots of services out there that provide rides to the polls for people. So these are all things that, again, you can reach out to us for help on or look into yourself. Tell yourself that once you're there, you're staying until you have cast your vote. Even though the polls may close at a certain time, if you're in line to vote before they close, you have the right to cast your vote, no matter how long it takes. Now, the number one absolute best, most productive way to make sure that you vote is do it with a friend. And the biggest thing is you hold each other accountable. You can help each other check your registration, and you can say, hey, remember, we're voting today. It's noon. We said we were gonna vote, and you go do it. Ballots can be confusing. Don't feel bad if you find your ballot or your election to be confusing. It's not just you. I'm literally a political organizer who's doing this here right now, and I can sometimes find ballots to be very confusing. So here's the deal. There are many issues to vote on each election, and they're all really important, but we don't all have time to research each and every one, so there are two different approaches. One, find a trusty ballot guide. Several great organizations do ballot guides for elections in your area, so just Google the election or the organization and the word ballot guide and see what comes up. You can also turn to any trusted activists or organizers. Once you find a ballot guide you like, save it to your phone or print it out so that you can bring it with you on election day. Or you can use it to fill out an actual sample ballot that you get sent in the mail, and then you can just bring the sample ballot with you when you vote so that you know what you want to fill out. Option 2, just vote for the things you know, and you can leave the rest blank. This is completely okay. We're all learning to navigate this democratic system with its ins and outs and obstacles. Be gentle with yourself. It's okay if you just do the things that you know and trust, and next time you can promise yourself that maybe you'll try to do a little bit more. But the fact that you're voting and you're picking a couple things that really matter to you is amazing. And you should be proud of yourself and not feel bad for leaving a couple things blank. Last point, please vote. We as young people hold so much power. There are more of us than any other age group. The numbers are on our side, but the turnout isn't. We have to claim our power by actually showing up if we want to have a say in our own future. We have inherited a society and a planet that has been plundered by the generations before us, and no one is going to save it but us. When we vote, we take a stand in fighting for our own lives and the lives of those around us. And remember, not everybody can vote. There are immigrants and incarcerated people and people on probation who should be able to vote but are not. So when you vote, you're not just voting for yourself, but you are voting for them. All right, guys, we made it. The last thing I'm gonna ask you guys is that you share what you learn. When you're researching voting, or when you're emailing us, or when you're watching this video, let other people know what you're learning. You'd be surprised how many people didn't know what you just learned. And by sharing that information, you help educate all of us. So that's it. Please go make a vote plan, email us with any questions, talk to your friends, encourage your friends to vote, and go do it and make a big difference.